of you guys are familiar with the game that Ubisoft came out with called XDefiant? XDefiant is, you know, it's an arena shooter, um, put up by Ubisoft, and it's like it's an arena shooter trying to combine a bunch of different Ubisoft franchises. It's bringing in Division. It's bringing in what's it called? Watch Dogs. I forget the other franchises were. Yeah, and so KG, it's an arena shooter. Battlefield COD, that kind of thing. But they're using uh the IPs of several of their franchises, like Watch Dogs, like uh I just lost the name. Division, Watch Dogs. I think that is Splinter Cell in there? I can't remember if Splinter Cell is in there or not. But like 4 or 5 of their IPs as models. Like you're not using like lead characters from these, but they're using like NPC type characters from these franchises as avatars that you can be in. Far Cry. I think Far Cry is another one. But they're different avatars, and I think different kind of classes maybe with different types of weapon sets and whatnot. And they're claiming it's like the COD killer. I've watched a review of it already from Angry Joe, and bearing in mind, XDefiant is a free-to-play game. It is a free-to-play game, but there are microtransactions, of course. So Joe does kind of get a little long-winded. Obviously, Ackman's gonna be a little bit more concise. So I'm actually going to take that off so we can get to see the full screen for Ackman. Alright, so I'm curious what Ackman is going to say, and let's see, he is usually there, so I will put myself here. I think that should be good. Alright, so let's see what the Ackman has to say about XDefiant. And can it compete with Call of Duty? Is it the Call of Duty killer? Let's check this out. 3, 2, 1. Talk to me, Mr. Ackman.
What's up, everybody? This is the Ackman here, and today, Call of Duty might finally have some real competition. You know, as a Halo fan, that sentence just made me a little sad. However, for the last 3 years, a new first-person shooter had been lurking in the shadows, but rumors of development trouble had circled the web. The release date kept getting pushed back, and then in April of 2023, a closed beta test saw this game surprisingly grab more viewers on Twitch than Call of Duty, and we started hearing the phrase COD killer again. I'm talking about XDefiant, a game developed and released by Ubisoft with the former executive producer of Call of Duty up until 2015.
Nice.
I know, the deal's sounding a little better. Mark Rubin was the executive producer at Infinity Ward, so he oversaw production of all of the Call of Duty games that we consistently, all the games that we've held up to this gold standard. And when you have a guy like that, it immediately draws my attention. Even more so when apparently 1 million people logged in to play XDefiant within 2.5 hours of its launch. And while naturally free-to-play games will get more players, that's pretty good. Now, what is XDefiant in a nutshell? Well, it's a fast-paced 6v6 multiplayer shooter with maps and operators from Ubisoft's other franchises. You'll immediately notice the similarities.
Hang on, so let me rewind that. Okay, so...
Nutshell. Well, it's a fast-paced 6v6 multiplayer shooter with maps and operators.
So you got Ghost Recon Phantoms. That's what this is. I'm kind of blocking it, unfortunately, but you got Ghost Recon Phantoms. Over here, I'm really in front of it. You have the Cleaners. That's from the Division. The Libertad, which this annoyed me. It's obviously pronounced Libertad because it's like Latin America in pronunciation. When I watched Angry Joe, he was grossly mispronouncing this. Echelon, I believe, is Splinter Cell. And of course, Dead Sect is Watch Dogs.
from Ubisoft's other franchises, you'll immediately notice the similarities it has to the core of Call of Duty. And it's clear they're trying to innovate on that classic formula. And while this makes the game instantly recognizable, easy to grasp, this also means that XDefiant has some identity issues, which we'll talk about later on. Basically,
Yeah, I can see
XDefiant
that.
is an answer, a solution, a prayer answered to longtime Call of Duty fans who have been exhausted with the franchise lately. The Call of Duty veterans, if you will, veterans. People like me who shake their fist in the air and say, back in my day when characters were killed, they stayed dead. With XDefiant making waves, there's been a sort of renaissance with Call of Duty YouTubers. But why is that? Today, I'll be answering these questions and the biggest question of all. Can XDefiant compete with Call of Duty? This video is sponsored by XDefiant. Now, if you have some concerns about that, I understand. And this is not a full review of XDefiant. The game is free to play, so if you don't want to take my word for it, you can hop in and try it out yourself. Now, I think if you've watched any of my Call of Duty reviews and you resonate with the things I like and don't like about Call of Duty, how the series has progressed over the years, if you enjoy those reviews, I think you'll most likely enjoy XDefiant and you will certainly enjoy this video. And yes, we will be talking about the monetization. Thankfully, you cannot purchase any weapon or equipment with real money, so right off the bat, there's not a trace of any pay-to-win nonsense. Let's talk gameplay. How does XDefiant feel? It definitely feels like...
I don't know if he's gonna get into this. It is an 18-minute video, so he might. But one thing I saw with Angry Joe's review is that the DedSec from Watch Dogs are initially locked off, and you have to earn in-game currency in order to unlock them. However, this is the same in-game currency that you can buy. Okay, Wagyu, have a good night. So with the DedSec faction, you can technically buy them to unlock them because you can purchase like the in-game coins, whatever they're called, to unlock DedSec instead of having to earn them through God knows how many matches of gameplay. So I don't know if DedSec has some specialized gear that would makes the game different. So to that respect, it is a little pay to win, I think.
Classic older Call of Duty games. Now I streamed my first time playing XDefiant completely blind, zero expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. Oh my god! Oh! Almost with the quad. Almost with the quad, bro. The fast-paced combat and movement is solid for the most part. The weapons all feel great, and would you look at that? They even got the right names for them. It's always nice to see that. And that's the thing, XDefiant almost feels like it was made to address a lot of criticism.
Well, I will say one thing Ubisoft does, and you can attribute this to Tom Clancy because they're basically licensed for all of Tom Clancy stuff. Tom Clancy, if you've read any of his novels, is very detail-oriented when it comes to military weaponry. He always makes sure he gets the nomenclatures correct. He'll go into great detail about weapons and vehicles and systems that are used by the military. So it doesn't actually surprise me one bit that they would get the weapon names and the weapon nomenclatures in a Ubisoft game correct when one of the properties is a Tom Clancy, at least one or two of the properties is a Tom Clancy property, Division and Splinter Cell, which are, again, they always make sure they get the weapon names right.
Around COD. For example, there has always been a love-hate relationship with kill streaks, and XDefiant doesn't have any.
Oh my goodness!
Coincidentally, you also can't go prone. What does this do? Well, it gets rid of the age-old strategy of camping in a single spot like an asshole, but it also gets rid of drop shotting. Sometimes these things are fine in Call of Duty, but not having these things in XDefiant makes the game more approachable, casual, and laid back. No kill streaks, you might think that doesn't sound very fun, but it makes playing the objective way more enjoyable, because you're incentivized to. Call of Duty has always had an issue with prioritizing individual efforts and not really encouraging teamwork. Why? because unlocking skins and getting kill streaks is often more fun than winning the match. That is both a testament to COD's amazing progression, but it can also make matches suck ass when nobody is playing to win. XDefiant addresses this directly in an attempt to bring back the casual fun of COD. Reduce the sweating in lobbies, we're not at the gym. We don't need to perspirate this much, okay? They want to remove the toxic builds, the cheap strategies. XDefiant has a longer time to kill, and I usually prefer that because it means firefights are less determined by who shot first. XDefiant is taking a more casual, arcade approach to things. Take movement, for example. It's pretty fast. Nothing too crazy, but it's also not as heavy and grounded as a more realistic modern shooter would be. XDefiant is not perfect though. One of the biggest balancing problems is movement. Now, we all like to go fast and hit the zoomies and outmaneuver other players, but if bunny hopping and movement exploits become the meta, the thing that defines skill, XDefiant may not end up being so casual.
Yeah, and this was a huge complaint when I watched Angry Joe's reaction to like the bunny hopping is, I don't know if Ackman is going to go into this, but with the bunny hopping, like you can actually like jump and change directions in the air, and you can't, if you are trying to shoot someone who's bunny hopping all over the place, you can't. And the person bunny hopping, their point of aim apparently does not change. So if they're on you, if they're targeted on you and they're bunny hopping everywhere, their target reticle stays on you. So they'll mow you down while you're tracking all over the place trying to track their trajectory and their change of movement in midair. And that was a huge complaint with Joe. That is just, it's insane. Everybody just bunny hops all over the place.
I found a perfect clip from Reddit to illustrate exactly what I'm talking about.
Right there.
Yeah, it looks a little silly, doesn't it? What's really silly.
Let's look at it again. You'll actually see
exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. Did you see that? I'm gonna slow-mo it.
Talking about.
Just in case it's. All right. Let's. Should be enough. All right. You just once more watch the directionality of this person. Watch this. They jump up mid-air, they change directions. In mid-air, they change directions and come back down. And their perspective, their point of aim never changed. It stayed locked in. And from what Joe was saying, a lot of people are doing this, and it's just making the game a pain in the ass to play.
Yeah, it looks a little silly, doesn't it? What's really silly is mid-air strafing, like jumping this way but changing direction in the middle of a jump, almost like it's a double jump. This makes it really hard to like pin someone down or be able to predict which way they're going. He also jumps 5 times in 3 seconds. This is something players do in like every firefight. They just constantly bounce and you're like, well, shit, should I be doing that too? It's not the greatest meta to have. I think they should keep the same pace of gameplay, but maybe add a punishment to jumping this much. But
remove that aspect entirely. You don't need to punish someone for using. You don't need to punish someone for using a game mechanic you as the game developer put it. You as the game developer fucked up by putting into the game the ability to jump and then change trajectory mid-air to go somewhere else while still maintaining a solid line of sight. Every other FPS that has jumping in it, if you jump, your target moves too. Your point of aim moves too. But in XDefiant, not only are you able to change direction mid-air, your point of aim does not change. That's a fault of the dev. Don't be, players may be cheap assholes for using it, but you as the developer put it in. And they need to, my opinion is XDefiant needs to roll out a patch and get rid of that. Because it's going to piss off a lot of people.
Mark Rubin has said they're addressing this already.
Sure
XDefiant is
they.
in its preseason, so it's a time for them to figure things out. And I think it's a good sign that they're listening and reacting to player feedback so quickly. So hopefully the balancing only improves. I like that XDefiant also puts a greater emphasis on teamwork than Call of Duty does.
Yeah, right. One complaint I did hear, and I don't know, we'll see what the Ackman says. I'm kind of front loading this a little bit. Joe did not think that the character models available for you looked all that great. Like, especially the cleaners over here, the cleaners from the Division, they look generic. His opinion was he didn't think that the character models looked very good. They didn't look like someone you kind of wanted to play as an avatar. Not that it really kind of matters because you're FPS anyway, but he didn't think that the character models looked very good. Now we'll see what the Ackman says.
Does. Because you can play as operators from 5 different factions, each with their own abilities, passives, and ultimates. These can support your teammates or disrupt your foes. It's kind of like a hybrid between a class and a hero. Cleaners are the pyrotechnics. They can pull out a flamethrower that insta-kills anyone at short range. They can launch a drone that leaves a trail of fire and explodes. And if you pick this faction, all of your weapons will have incendiary bullets.
What?
Which, when combined with the sniper, is a recipe for some straight bullshit.
Guys, the activate's in our lobby. Oh my god. Oh my
Dude,
god.
that fucking sniper is so... That's like, actually, I hate that. Like, if you get hit, but you make it around a corner, you survive, the fire damage will get you. It's not the most annoying thing in the world, but with how good snipers are, I've gone up against this strategy quite often. The Echelon are the stealthier class that can use camo. Makes sense, okay. They're from Splinter Cell. Libertad are healers, Phantoms are tanks with energy and riot shields, and the DedSec use hacking and disruption. So there's a nice variety of roles and tactics to play around with. The abilities are fun to use, but like I said, they don't turn XDefiant into a hero shooter. It is nice to be able to shield or heal your teammates, provide powerful buffs, or receive those buffs in return. The post-game stats screen is nice too. At the end, you get to see everyone's accomplishments in different categories. And if you didn't do shit, it just says present. You were here. Congratulations, you played the video game. Also, when you lose, the background text just says losers. The ultimates are powerful, but I've yet to play a match where I've gotten to use mine twice, and sometimes not at all. So you're not getting killed by overpowered shit a whole lot in this game. It's cute that you can upvote your teammates based on what they did, and that'll give them extra XP. It's cute. It's fun to give. Now let's talk about the 4-letter acronym that strikes fear and terror into the hearts of all COD fans. SBMM, or Skill-Based Matchmaking. Each year, every Call of Duty fan takes part in the annual Skill-Based Matchmaking Complainathon, where new game comes out, we play it for about a week, and then we start bitching about matchmaking. But you know, at first when you hear someone complain about SBMM, your first instinct is sometimes to be like, you're coping, seething, malding, get good, you're bad, uninstall your own life. But I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not the only one who has noticed this pattern.
SBMM, I've said this before and I'll say it again, man. SBMM is I dare say, killing video games as a whole. If SBMM wasn't a thing, I would stream multiplayer.
I've noticed these changes in every COD since Modern Warfare 2019. You start off playing pretty well, then you get some really, really oppressive lobbies where it seems like you're playing with people who understand the most meta strategies and know all the exploits. You just feel like out of your element. Skill-based matchmaking has been a major point of contention in the COD community for the last 5 years, and XDefiant is trying to deliver the same kind of old school Call of Duty fun while addressing that skill-based matchmaking issue. Mark Rubin has made extensive posts providing great arguments for why he doesn't want it in XDefiant, and it's refreshing to see a studio actually address it and try to do something about it. Activision and the Call of Duty developers have avoided addressing SBMM directly for years.
Now, been silent here for a little bit, but I honestly, when it comes to skill-based matchmaking, I kind of don't have an opinion with it, because I don't really play FPS like arena shooters or that. You know, my game of choice is a space sim MMO called Elite Dangerous. That is my poison of choice, and it has been for the last 3 or 4 years. With skill-based matchmaking, I can kind of see why people would want it, because if a game has been out for some time and you come into it fresh, I can understand it's not any fun whatsoever to jump into a game and within the first 10 seconds you're down and dead and your game is done. And you've got a lot of players that are high ranked, they've got great weapons, they know how to they are much more experienced in the game, and you know and for you it's very discouraging to jump into these matches and in 10-15 seconds you're dead. Game over. Next game. 10 seconds, dead. Game over. Next. I can understand why that would be frustrating. I did try Rainbow Six Siege, and I had a very similar experience. I would get in, and within the first 30 seconds of the match, I was down. I was done. And that was happening over and over and over again. And yeah, that's very frustrating because you're not getting to play the game. So I can appreciate why skill-based matchmaking is a good thing. Now, again, I have no idea if it's working properly, if the whole concept of skill-based matchmaking is just not working as it should or as it was intended, and whether or not a lack of skill-based matchmaking would benefit players like that, where they're not just dying in the first 5 seconds and it's game over and you're done. But I understand and I can kind of appreciate the intention behind it. So, see, doesn't seem to work. A lot of time it feels like the match is one-sided. Sometimes your team completely dominant, sometimes the enemy team destroys you. It's really rare to see a balanced game where both teams seem to have a chance to win. So, KG, correct me if I'm mistaken. So it sounds like skill-based matchmaking. So it's basically just the skill-based matchmaking doesn't work. You get into a match and you and everyone on your team is very low ranked, i.e. very low experience, whereas the other team is all very high ranked, or the reverse. So from the sound of things, it sounds like the devs, when they implement skill-based matchmaking, they just don't do it right. Like they can't figure out how to make skill-based matchmaking work. In which case, I guess maybe not having skill-based matchmaking ups your chance of having a more balanced team. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. You may run into the same problems with non-skill-based matchmaking. It honestly sounds like the devs need to figure out how the fuck to make skill-based matchmaking work in the first place. That's what it sounds like to me. If they can get that working, maybe people won't hate it as much as they did.
Because they don't need to. Because the truth is, Call of Duty's revenue and player retention and player counts are bringing in money, so they don't have to change anything. So on paper, XDefiant absolutely could compete with COD for simply providing some of the things that fans have been asking to be put in Call of Duty. XDefiant has a boot camp playlist for players level 25 and under. This is a nice, casual way for new players to get a feeling for the gameplay, to learn the maps, and not go up against, tryhards. Outside of this welcome playlist, there is no skill-based matchmaking in XDefiant. We did it, fellas. We did. Well, we didn't do it. The developers did. But we complained enough that somebody listened and decided to do something. I haven't had the same issues I've had in previous Call of Duties. I didn't feel like I had to try to have fun. I just was. I wasn't motivated by kill streaks or, getting 100 headshots, just shooting guys and trying to do the objective and play as a team. Respawns are also a notorious issue in Call of Duty, but in this game, they're surprisingly good on all modes. I mean, you can still get spawn trapped, of course, but I've never had a spawn into instant death moment. which again is something you'll run into when there's powerful kill streaks being used all the time. Sometimes there's hit registration issues and snipers don't flinch enough when they're shot, but there's no like major red.
Yeah, from what Angry Joe is saying, snipers don't flinch at all when you get shot. Which, from what he was saying, sniper rifles are pretty OP. They're all like one-shot kills. If you have a sniper rifle, it's all one-shot kills. So it sounds like they may need to nerf that.
Flags when it comes to balancing and the core combat and gameplay. There are, however, flaws when it comes to content. For a game that pursues a more casual FPS experience, you'd expect there to be a lot more game modes and variety. Everything is balanced around 6v6, so we don't have BTB or bigger maps to play on. The modes in the game are fine. I just want there to be more unique stuff. Hotshot is like a funny version of Kill Confirmed, where the more kills you confirm, the faster you go until you become the hotshot. But besides that, there's just not enough wacky fun to be had. I want to see more creative modes and maps in the future, more stuff to interact with. The maps themselves are decent, they don't have any crazy standout designs, but they service the game just fine. What about progression and custom classes? I'd say it's about the same. Passable, not exemplary. Weapon customization is alright. Again, everything seems a bit generic. It plays great, but I don't feel as satisfied with unlocking new attachments and new guns. But maybe that's just me. Maybe it's also because all the weapons are super familiar. You know, where the rocket launchers or underbarrel flamethrowers, throwing knives, fuck it, put a boomerang in this game.
Underbarrel flamethrowers. Guessing that was a slip of the tongue. I'm sure he knows what an underbarrel grenade launcher looks like.
I don't know. I really want to see more experimental stuff. Now, I'm not saying you should just straight up copy COD's progression. I'm saying give me better rewards. I don't really feel like I've unlocked anything that made me super excited or something that was going to change a certain playstyle of mine dramatically. There's something about the unlocks that isn't quite hitting the dopamine receptors. Battle Pass progression is painfully slow. It takes like an hour to unlock one tier. Double XP almost feels like regular XP, it's just been halved. And you also have to complete basic challenges to unlock weapons and equipment. So overall, the modes and the type of content and the amount of it, the progression, XDefiant does the job, it just doesn't excel at it. Now let's talk about monetization. Who doesn't love a good cosmetic or an in-game store? As a loyal consumer of video games, as somebody who loves consuming, look at all the consuming I've done, I don't really feel incentivized to spend money on XDefiant. I don't think some of the bundles are worth it. And that's partially a good thing because you're not being tempted with better weapons and shit like, oh, you want to get better at the game? You want to stop sucking ass? Ooh, spend a little money, get this cool weapon. There's none of that. The Battle Pass has like one unlockable weapon and the rest is cosmetic. Here's the thing, I don't really care about the cosmetics yet, and I believe battle passes expire, so FOMO, not good. Do the Halo Infinite, do the Helldiver system, please. It's way better. I would probably spend more money on the game if that were the case. Now, while Ubisoft has been under fire for some of their business decisions lately, it's important to remember that the actual developers of this game, the people who design the product, and those who decide how it's monetized are two radically different groups of people. So I believe in giving XDefiant an...
And I think that is a distinction people make when it comes to the game versus the monetization. Whenever anybody rails against a company for their monetization, they don't necessarily look at the devs. If there's no prevailing evidence to support that the devs thought that this should be into it, which the majority of devs never will. They look at it as the company itself, the label being greedy versus the developers, where they'll only start dinging the developers if the gameplay sucks. It's always pretty much looked at the parent company whenever there's a complaint on any monetizations, I would say.
Honest chance as a game, even if I'm critical of Ubisoft in other ways. I think XDefiant has a lot to offer FPS fans that have grown tired of how try-hard newer games can be. But one thing I think needs to be figured out soon, and easily my biggest critique with XDefiant, is its lack of identity. Now, here's the thing. With new franchises, there's no built-up expectation, right? So there's a certain amount of leniency you'll give a brand new IP when it comes out. Notice I only say lack of identity, because the truth is, being in limbo is certainly preferable to being in hell. I pose this challenge to you, loyal viewer. Describe XDefiant to someone who has never heard of it, without comparing or referencing it to any other specific video games.
I just did. I did when we first went into it. It's an arena shooter that uses different IPs from Ubisoft to fill in the roster. There you go. I was able to describe it without, referencing other video games. He's making that he's pushing this a little bit too hard, I think, this idea.
It's hard, isn't it? Splitgate may have been called Halo with portals and it was unique and fun for a time, but didn't quite have a lot of staying power. What worries me is when so much of your brand recognition relies on other brands. This game kind of relies on people already being familiar with Call of Duty and Overwatch, Team Fortress 2, whatever. Which most people are, don't get me wrong. But the point I'm trying to make is that if Ubisoft wants XDefiant to compete...
Actually, I'd say Ubisoft did not go into this game relying upon recognition of other other shooting franchises like Call of Duty or Battlefield. I don't think he was doing that. I think he was relying upon people's knowledge of their own franchises. They were relying on people going, oh, I could play characters from The Division, or I could play characters from Splinter Cell, or I could play characters from Watch Dogs in this arena shooter game. That, I think, is what Ubisoft was counting on for XDefiant. The problem is, and I have no idea if they made this clear in their initial marketing, is people may have been anticipating playing lead type characters from these franchises. So playing Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell, or playing Nomad from Ghost Recon, or playing, I don't know, playing Aiden Pierce or one of the other lead characters from Watch Dogs. I could see that being a little bit misleading instead of playing generic NPC from said franchise. So I do think it's a little disingenuous saying that Ubisoft was counting on the comparisons to COD or what have you, when I think they were really leaning into their own IPs as a drawing point for XDefiant. The fact that it's free to play and the fact that you can play characters from these different IP worlds in this game. That feels like what Ubisoft was counting on. And whether or not it works, I don't know. I do think that future monetization is going to include major characters from the various IPs that they're putting into this game. I don't know if there's a major character from The Division that anybody would be really excited to play or not, but I could see them bringing in Sam Fisher as one of the characters you could play, or Nomad from Nomad, or I can't remember what the villain's name is from the last Ghost Recon, but I could see bringing in Nomad, and I could see maybe bringing in Aiden from Watch Dogs, as a means of monetization for you to play one of those characters. I could absolutely see that. Yeah, and it makes sense. You're absolutely right, Kiji. It's using your own IPs gives you a toy box that you can already play with. You have these characters, you know how to model them, and you know what they can do, so you can add those elements into the game as perks. So with Aiden, you've got the hacking. You've got the hacking that he can do. With the Division stuff, you saw that with the flamers, but like one of the big things with the Division, probably the most commonly used ones was either the drones or the little balls that you could throw up that were either healers or they could explode or something like that. You could throw those into a Division character that you introduce. With Splinter Cell, Maybe like I don't know, I never played Splinter Cell, so I don't know what specialized things Sam Fisher can do. But you've got this toy box of stuff that you can bring into the game, and it's yours. You don't have to create it anew, and it's something that actually could bring a fan of the franchise into your game, especially if it's free to play. If it's free to play, people would be more inclined to spend a little money in your monetization store to customize or get a character icon. As long as you're not asking for too much. If you're asking like $30 for to play as Nomad, yeah, people are gonna maybe have an issue with that. If you ask like 10 or $15, I could see people being okay with that. I could see people being fine, like, okay, spend $10 and I get Nomad from Ghost Recon, or I get Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell. Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind paying that since I didn't pay anything for the game. That there, I see like from way Ackman's been describing this, and from what I saw with the Angry Joe, I can see there being potential here to grow this game. Now it is Ubisoft. And as we all know, Ubisoft has a way of fucking things up. But I do see the potential here for them to grow this and make it and improve it and bring in more people. It's just a question of, are they going to do it, or are they going to do what they do so often and shoot themselves in the foot? And only time is going to tell on that one.
Compete with Call of Duty, they need to be able to like point at parts of it and be like, this is what makes XDefiant, this is what makes our game unique. And that's hard to do without comparing XDefiant to other games. But I'm also a fucking dweeb who talks about video games on the internet for a living, so these complaints may not matter as much to you. Now, out of the games represented in XDefiant, I've only played Splinter Cell, and it's been a while. Still, I'm familiar with Far Cry and Watch Dogs, but I don't recognize any of these operators. Like, who is Zelda from Far Cry? Is this a known character?
Honestly, I never played Far Cry, so I couldn't tell you either. And that's one of the hiccups is you're getting NPCs from these franchises. You're not getting really well known characters. So a casual like myself, who casually knows about these games, these characters will not be a draw for me. That is a downside.
I tried looking her up. I couldn't find anything on this character. Is it a real person? Let me know in the comments below. You know who I do know? Sam Fisher. And when I see Sam Fisher or those iconic...
Exactly what I was just saying. And that's why I think that someone like Sam Fisher and other characters from the franchises will be brought in later as DLC, as like something in the monetization store.
goggles. That's all it takes for me to look at something and be like, ah, that's Splinter Cell. I don't even know the name of the guy who has the famous, do you want to know the definition of insanity? Quote from Far Cry, but I know what his face looks like. XDefiant needs more marketable operators because there's no story, there's not really a main setting. You're not really restricted to anything. That's the thing, despite taking inspiration from multiple reputable Ubisoft franchises, I don't recognize a single one of these people or operators.
Don't be sad. This is just how it works out sometimes.
Shit, man, you guys have a whole bunch of recognizable characters from Rainbow Six Siege, and they are going to add more factions, so highly likely they will add Siege into this. You know, not every game has it all figured out on day one. In fact, most games don't have it all figured out on day one, sadly. But I'm gonna keep it real, Ubisoft. If you want XDefiant to stick around, it'll need more than the standard battle pass, the standard seasonal updates, the standard live service promises we've seen in 100 different games before. You're gonna need something new, unique, and fresh. So, can XDefiant compete with Call of Duty? Well, right now they couldn't have released it at a better time, but they could have released it in a better state. I think the game has loads of untapped potential. If you're a fan of Call of Duty or you're looking for a new FPS game to get good at, I would absolutely check it out. If the developers play their cards right, listen to player feedback, and commit to adding substantial content and getting creative with things, I think they'll discover a better sense of their identity and what makes XDefiant unique. In that sense, I think it can compete with Black Ops 6. The question is, will it? But what do you think? Are you enjoying XDefiant? Have you even played it at all? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content. Alright everyone, that's all I got for today. This is the Act Man signing out. Peace!
I appreciate that he left it alone. Let's see. Okay. Well, that was pretty interesting. I only seen one review, and this was a different take on it. A very interesting take at that. I actually appreciate, a different point of view on this. And from the Actman's review here, it looks like XDefiant has potential. I think my opinion is, if will XDefiant succeed is very much going to depend on what they do with it during the next, I'll say 4 to 5 months. Depending on what they do with it the next 4 to 5 months in terms of fixing and tweaking the problems that are being discovered at launch, and what they are able to do with it moving forward, the additions they can make moving forward, that's going to be crucial to its success or not. I think that they've got a decent base upon which to work with. If they can do something with this base, this could end up being quite successful.